Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Thursday, July 11th. Yeah. Big down day in the NASDAQ today, as it looked like to me. Actually, we had a pretty good CPI number, and that's been the thing. Like, everybody's been focused on inflation, and that's been supposedly positive for tech stocks, but it wasn't positive today. But actually, there's something I want to talk about. It's along the lines of this inflation number, but it has to do with the dollar. Okay, the dollar was down today. Now, this is one of those things, folks. I've been talking about this for a while. I've been telling you guys about this many, many times, that the way to spot the fact that these monetarist people and these hard money types, these gold bug type of people, the way to spot that they don't know what they're talking about and they're very confused is when they contradict themselves, okay? And they do that frequently. I've told the story many times about my run-in with David Stockman, who used to be the former budget chief for Reagan, and I met him when I was at Fox News. I'm not going to go over the story again, but I bumped into him twice when I used to be at Fox News, and he was going on and on about something, and then I said, "Well, David, how about this?" No, it's not that. And then the next time I saw him, he comes back, and it was like the complete reverse argument, that he agreed with what when I said, "How about this?" It was like, yeah, now it's that. So it was a contradiction of his original argument, okay? And he just made it like blatantly without even recognizing that he was contradicting himself. So you could see that a lot in these arguments of these people who are, they're not very intelligent. They buy into a belief system, right? And we've seen it so many times where the belief system doesn't work out the way it's supposed to, at least according to their understanding or their presentation of it. And then when it doesn't work out, they'll say something completely opposite to contradict their belief system, but that's only to justify why things are not moving the way they thought they were going to move. Okay, so let me get more specific about this, because you're probably all scratching your heads like, what is old Mikey talking about here? Today we saw a good number on the CPI, right? It was below forecast. I think the headline was 0.1 and the core was 0.2. So it was in line, or it was considered like a good inflation number, okay, compared to ones that we've had. And they came in and they hammered the dollar down. I mean, there was a big move up in the yen, and there was a move up in the euro, not quite as big. And I immediately sent out to my subscribers, like, you gotta buy the dollar. This is just a silly, misinformed, ignorant, emotional reaction. I mean, just roll out the adverbs here. I mean, it was just like, it was another one of those things. And then I said to myself, isn't it interesting that they're selling a currency, the US dollar, when inflation is down, okay? Now, these are the same people, these are all the same people, I can assure you, who constantly rail against fiat currency because it loses its store of value. It is not, in fact, they say it's not even a store of value. You need something like gold, right? Which in their minds, that's like a true store of value. When you see that there's low inflation, why would you not want to have, that's the very definition, a currency in a system, in an economy where there's low inflation, is the very definition of a store of value. In other words, your money retains its value because there's no inflation. Okay, so you have a number where inflation has come down and you're selling that currency. Okay, and I understand the whole background driver of this, like, oh, that means the Fed's going to cut rates, and that's wrong. But let's just go with this inflation thing. Follow me on this. You're in an economic system where inflation is down or flat, and you're selling that currency even though low inflation is the very definition of a store of value. Your money retains its value. So by the same argument, you would have to argue, if you're consistent with your selling of the currency in low inflation, you would have to argue that you would buy a currency with high inflation, right? Because if you're selling a currency in a system, in an economic system where inflation is low, which is the very definition of a store of value, your money is retaining its value. If you're selling that currency in that environment, then the opposite argument has to hold true, that you want to buy a currency in an inflationary system, which is ridiculous because that is completely the loss of purchasing power of your money. But that's exactly what they have been doing. You see? So like my question is, okay, if you want to buy a currency in an inflationary system, an inflationary economy, how did that work out for the Turkish lira? How did that work out for the Argentine peso? You see the contradictions of what they're doing? I mean, this is the height of stupidity, okay? Now, I'm not a genius, but I can look at these things and I could see the obvious contradictions in what they are doing. Here are these people, and I can assure you, they're all the same people. These are the Peter Schiffs of the world. These are the people who constantly rail against fiat money, that it loses its value and blah, 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 that it's inflationary because there's no controls on the ability of the government to print it, etc. Okay? And they're constantly talking about that. And then you have a situation where you have an economic system, an economy, where inflation is falling, where it's down, which is the very definition of a store of value. That is where your money is not losing its purchasing power. As a matter of fact, if prices are coming down, in effect, in essence, it's increasing its purchasing power, and you're selling it. So if you're selling it, and if you're consistent with your argument, you have to say you prefer to buy a currency in a high inflation environment. You have to, if you're consistent with your argument. Now, of course, they would never, ever admit to that, okay? And they would never admit to what happened. They would twist that around saying, oh yeah, but the Fed's going to cut rates and that's going to be inflation. No, again, they're wrong on that too. Okay, they're wrong on that too, because what does a rate cut do? It does two things, as I've explained to you guys so many times. Number one, it lowers the general price level because the cost of credit is reflected in the cost of all goods and services. That's number one. And number two, it removes interest income from the economy. It literally siphons off money. It's deflationary. All right? So like, I look at that. I don't get shocked by these things anymore because like, I've been around so long and I've been talking about it so long and I've been explaining it so long. But it's still kind of amusing when I see it because it's like, you got these people, this mass of people out there. And if you're like me and you're like this, this observer from the outside, I mean, it's kind of like you're looking into, I don't know, some kind of a zoo or animal enclosure or something. We got all these crazy animals running around. They're all kind of hyper. They're highly emotional. They're moving real fast. You know, they're going all together, like twitching back and forth, back and forth. I mean, maybe you can kind of use the analogy of these big schools of fish where they all move, you know, like in unison. You know, when you're just on the outside observing all this, you know, that's how I feel. That's how I look at it. I just like, as an outside observer, I'm just looking at this behavior and I'm watching this behavior and I'm listening to how they talk about it, the communication of what's going on, how they explain it. And I'm just like, wow, man, that's just like the exact opposite of what you said like the last time. And then this time's, then the next time's going to be the exact opposite of what you're saying this time. And it just goes on and on and on. And it's a fascinating thing. And it's not like I've discovered any new way to look at anything. I'm just going off of their own, proclamations and their own explanations. So like all I've been hearing for years and years and years from these people is like, fiat money is terrible because it's inherently inflationary, because the government can print any amount of money without any controls, like a gold standard or something like that, or a fixed exchange rate. And then here you are in a system where inflation is falling. Another way to say that is that your purchasing power is going up. And it's like, I don't want this money. I don't want this currency. We got to sell it. We got to go short. We got to go short. So if that's the case, then the opposite must hold true. That the money you want is like the money attached to a highly inflationary system, economic system like Turkey or Argentina or one of these places. It's just, that's their argument. And they would, if you told them that, if you sat them down and said, do you understand what you are saying right now? And do you understand what your actions today, what they actually say? By doing what you did today, by selling the dollar in a low inflationary environment, okay? You're literally saying that you would prefer a currency in a high inflation environment. And they would say, no, that's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying that the Fed is going to cut rates, and they're going to segue into that stupid, rate cuts are inflationary, which there's absolutely zero argument for that whatsoever for the reasons that I explained. And again, there's plenty of empirical evidence. If you don't go with my reasoning, which is, I'm sorry, but it's ironclad. It's just, again, you don't have to be some kind of super genius economist. Not that, that's like an oxymoron term anyway. I just made it up. But I mean, it lowers the general price level and it removes interest income, okay? And we have empirical evidence in the form of Turkey, in the form of Argentina, in the form of Japan, which kept, I've used this example so many times, like Japan kept interest rates at negative all through the whole COVID thing when everybody was blowing up with inflation. And, they practically had no inflation whatsoever. And the funny thing is, like, since they raised it up to zero, they went from negative 10 basis points to zero. I think there is a tiny little bit of price increases creeping back in. So it's, guys, do you see what I'm talking about? Do you see what I'm talking about? If you sit down with these people and you just slowly, explain it. They won't let you explain it anyway because they're going to twist it to however, Intelligent people will, when they're presented with facts that contradict their arguments or their understandings, intelligent people will change their minds, okay? But people who stick to their positions, in spite of the facts, in spite of the evidence, they lack intelligence and they're just indoctrinated. They're indoctrinated people. And it's like they're in some kind of a prison within their minds. It's a belief system that they've created, which they cling to, and they will never allow themselves out of that for whatever reason. Maybe there's comfort in numbers. Maybe they want to see it that way for some kind of dark reason. I don't know why. But yeah, that's what it is. But intelligent people, when presented with the facts and the evidence, they will change their minds. And I before I met Warren Mosler and got into MMT, which was back in 2001, I was one of those people. I used to go, I was one of the first original guest hosts of Squawk Box when they started that show in 1996. I used to come on every month and sit next to Mark Haynes, the late Mark Haynes. And I wish I still had the tapes of me from that period, because I sounded just like Peter Schiff. As a matter of fact, one day I got a cold call from Peter Schiff. This was like in 2001 or 2002, asking me if I wanted to represent his company on TV. Well, he became a big TV guy himself, preaching all this nonsense, but we never agreed to anything, because at that time I was just on the cusp of me finding out about MMT and changing my mind. And I know a lot of you, since you've discovered me and this channel and other resources having to do with MMT, I know a lot of you have changed your minds too, and that's good. I like talking to smart people. I like talking to intelligent people. All right? So yeah, it was really something today. Anyway, folks, don't forget, please like and subscribe. I'm asking you, please. It helps the channel a lot. Just click the button, like and subscribe. Thank you very much for all of you who have been doing that. And don't forget to go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com, and sign up for a 30-day free trial to MMT Trader. But today it was fun, man. This stuff was fun. All right, see you tomorrow. Bye.